Welcome everyone to episode number 56 of Endless Conversation Loop. My name's Brandon, and I'm the problem. We haven't done a recording. We have not recorded something since, according to my files here on my computer, since... No, I don't want to just see the final track. I want to see the original track. I don't know. It's been like more than a month.
I mean, it's not as bad as it could have been. I feel like I thought it was almost like 2 to 3 months at one point because I was just sitting there and like, man, it really has been a while since we recorded.
Well, the last episode 55, came out on May 23rd, 2026.
And then a lot has happened since then.
Yes, a lot has happened since then. When I say the problem, I'm the problem in this. What I mean to say is, I have very much hit a streak. Like, this usually happens. If there's anybody miraculously who has followed this show over these 6 years that it has existed in some form or another, I'm sure people have noticed it's like, it usually comes in waves of like a lot of work and then a long lull of nothing because, I have an immense amount of respect for the people who do a full-time job and then like do creative things like this on the side. Like there's some people who have successful, depending on how you want to define successful, I guess, YouTube channels in addition to working a real job. I have an immense amount of respect for that because, God, that sounds horribly, miserably energy draining. And I can't do it. I can only do this when I'm like, I really want to do it. And it's been nice not doing this for a month, if only because like, I just need, like, it's literally just the ability to not, like, to just come home and not work on something. But this part, the part that we're doing right now, between me, I'm Brandon, and we're like almost 3 minutes into this and we haven't introduced ourselves. You are.
And I'm Boom. It is also me that is the problem because I've been meaning to like text you for like the last like week or two and I'm just like, hey Brandon, do you want to hang out? Hey, do you want to record? And I've been sitting there and just like, hey, he's probably busy.
Well, and that's the thing is like I am busy, but I'm not busy, right? I'm busy in the sense that it's like,
you're busy not being busy.
Yeah, I'm busy doing things like I went to New Mexico for a little bit and, just did some stuff down there, visited some family. I went to Minnesota, went and saw other family there. So I've been doing stuff, just not stuff that is specifically this podcast. I finished a video game yesterday, and I used that word specifically, finished. I have finished Donkey Kong Bonanza, and now I'm going through and doing all the 100% stuff, and that's really hard.
You're a braver man than I ever will be, because I still have not gotten to Switch 2. Although, I think Bonanza is going to be like one of the first games I buy when I eventually do. Because, coincidentally, I also have been finishing some games. My cousin and two of my other relatives, my aunt and my uncle from Michigan, actually were in town recently. And they just left as of today, the day of this recording. And she's my youngest cousin on my mom's side. She's like just turning 18. And it's very interesting for a 35-year-old and an 18-year-old to try to find any common ground, even in like family settings. But we found out that there was at least, the gaming connection. So we're like, oh, cool. What is some stuff that we could play? So we played Overcooked 2. We ended up beating it. We 3-starred everything. Because we are very cruel and, hate ourselves, apparently. And then, coincidentally enough, we got kind of a random game that I found by sheer dumb luck. Have you ever heard of a game called Scritchy Scratchy?
I have not, but that title sounds intriguing already.
All right, imagine, if you will, Balatro, but lottery tickets. That is Scritchy Scratchy. It's basically like... It's essentially like a clicker game without the clicking. It's more of like the scratch off clicker game. Basically, you're just buying a bunch of these tickets and then you're just getting money over and over and over again. But it's so like mindless that you don't really care. It's more like, ooh, number go up, brain happy. makes the dopamine. And then, so my cousin and I, we were both kind of sitting there chilling and playing with it. We also learned that there are very higher numbers because it one point hit like non-millions, which I did not know existed.
Oh yeah, like you have to think about it like this, right? You know how like in in geometry when you're learning shapes, you learn about like pentagon, hexagon,
Then you
and
get
there's
into,
a
like,
septagon,
rhombus.
octagon. Well, I'm just saying like all those shapes where it's like the starting part of it is like pentagon means it's got 5 sides. Hexagon has 6 sides. It's the same thing for like those billions type numbers. Like a hexillion, assuming that's the right number, would be,
That'd be like
whatever, like the
6,
sixth
and then how many
group.
zeros? Yeah.
So yeah, that nonillion would be for 9. Well, isn't vocabulary fun?
No. What makes it worse is when math gets involved on top of it. That's what I need. Weird words that I don't know and big numbers I didn't know exist. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Why does math have letters in it?
But my cousin and I actually 100%ed that game. It's not like a super long game, like, mind you, once you know what you're doing. But we were just kind of at the point of like, I think we sunk maybe like 30 hours into the game. Like, not necessarily like all 30 hours were there. Like, there was a few days where like I accidentally left my computer with the game running in the background and I kind of forgot about it. So that probably padded the numbers a little. But we ended up finishing the game and got all the achievements. So that is another 100% game off my Steam wish list. And it is only $6 on Steam, at least as of now, because I think the summer sale is also going on. So
affordable video games? What are those?
it's a short game though, so $6 kind of feels like that right area. But no, those are the last two, and I actually picked up Link to the Past and Octopath Traveler again, so I need to finish those also. If I get those done, which I hopefully will this potentially next week or two, it'll get me up to 12 games this year. I think that's right. Yeah, 12.
It's not bad for a little over 6 months in.
Well, my goal was to get 12 on the year last year, and then like I was going to try to do the same thing again. And I kind of cheated a little bit, so to speak, because like Link to the Past and was one of those games that I had finished or I had started last year and just never got around to finishing it. But I'm finishing it this year, so I'm counting it toward this year. Same thing with Kirby and the Forgotten Land when I finished that earlier this year. Like, I have a very interesting list of games I've finished so far when it comes to the 2026 list, at least. Because, like, it has games like... Let me see if I can pull it up here. Because I beat Braid, I beat Arco, I beat Mina the Hollower. By the way, phenomenal game. I may 100% that one sometime down the road.
And that, like, just came out, too.
Oh, yeah. I saw it come out, and it was $20, and I'm like, oh, hell yes. And then I just immediately got sunk into it. It's so good. It's essentially Game Boy Color Bloodborne is the best way I can call it. Like, not in the grotesque sense of, like, how Bloodborne is, but, like, the combat is very Bloodborne-inspired.
Interesting.
And it's made by the dudes who did Shovel Knight Yacht Club games, so I was already, like, invested as soon as I heard Yacht Club was tagged onto it. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, we're going in. I think the weirdest...
They were working on that for a long time, too.
Oh, yeah, but, like, it shows how well that it worked. No, but the weird one, I think, honestly, that I played this year was a boomer shooter called Forgive Me, Father, where it's, like, eldritch horror Doom, basically.
It seems like, I mean, Doom, but like, already, hell, demons, that seems like it would work pretty well, eldritch horror with something like that.
Yeah, the only reason that game sticks with me as much as it does is I don't remember if we talked about this already. I know I talked about it with somebody. So they have, like, zombies as some of the enemies in there. But there's a very specific one that will haunt me to the rest of my days. Because these assholes, I kid you not. So it's a zombie that is carrying a head in one hand. And then if you headshot the one that is on the neck, this thing will literally just take the head in its hand and put it on where the old head was and then keep going. I'm like, assholes. No, that's not fair.
That is brilliant.
Like,
That is a great idea.
that has stuck with me, and I beat that game in like February. I'm not forgetting something like that. It was the most insane thing to, and these are like a common enemy. Like, these are not like a boss or anything. This just is a thing you fight constantly. So I'm just like, oh, okay.
And I think that's pretty ingenious.
And like, it basically forces you to shoot the one in the head first before shooting the actual head, because otherwise it's gonna just put it back on. And it's just insane to watch that for the first time, where you're just, hey, no, that's against the rules. Those aren't zombie rules.
You know, I'm not much of a first-person shooter person. In fact, I think I might, in my entire game library, have one right now, maybe. It's just never really been my genre. But I will say, in a similar vein, I am also interested, as many others were earlier this year, in that like mouse game.
Me into the Hollow, yeah.
That mouse PI.
Oh,
no,
mouse,
this other
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Mouse
yeah.
PI for hire. I don't know. Something about that game. I'm sure it's because I love old cartoons. Not necessarily the rubber hose one specifically, but I love.
But that kind of like old school
70-plus-year-old
animation
cartoons.
style,
So.
yeah, like very Cuphead isn't
Yes,
Cuphead
yes.
inspired.
That's one that I'd like to play.
I still think it is funny that that IGN review for Mouse PI for Hire was probably the most insane one I have read, probably since the Alpha Sapphire review. The good old 7.8 too much water. We now have I forget what they gave it. I think it was like a 6 or a 7, and they were like too much cheese basically. And I'm like, it's a game about a mouse. What were you expecting? Like I'm gonna be on a very like high soapbox here when I say this. As someone who, and we can both attest to this, as two people who have a lot of experience in journalism and love video games, I don't know what that was, but it wasn't journalism. That was just ranting about how you want to like have a, like, the biggest complaint they had was like they wanted a more like noir style story, like more gritty. And it's like, you see what they're doing, right? Like, these are cartoons. Like, this is more Who Framed Roger Rabbit than it is like Goodfellas. And like, you don't
Also, I mean, it is pretty noir in the grand scheme of things from what I've seen.
Yes, but it's also tongue-in-cheek. It's less like, it's not like noir, it's more like parody noir in a way. Because it's like, it's doing all these like motifs and themes and carrying them over. But like,
Yeah, well, right, it'd be pretty weird if it played it entirely straight.
yeah, exactly. Like, the funny part of it is like, it's the same kind of logic as like Leslie Nielsen in Airplane. Leslie Nielsen is so serious in his role that it becomes funny because he's the odd man out. This is why Mouse PI for Hire is as like funny as it is, because like Troy Baker, who voices the main guy in it, he plays it very straight, like Leslie Nielsen would in that case, where it's like he's being serious. He's like, but like, the over grandeur of him being serious somehow adds to the humor to me. And I don't think that the person who reviewed it understood that concept per se. Like, they're looking at it more at a face value versus like you have to kind of peel the layers a little bit to kind of see what exactly they're going for. It's so weird to see like gaming journalism in particular that has kind of gotten down this rabbit hole of like, they want to like find things to complain about, and then the stuff that they give, you know, high praise. Because like, they're also getting some flack for their Mina the Hollower review, which, don't get me wrong, I think is a phenomenal game. I do agree with the people that it's not a 10 out of 10. It is still by far my favorite game of the year though. But it kind of leans into the same problems in a way where it's like, people aren't seeing what it is trying to do versus like they're taking everything at face value. Like, media literacy is such a problem in gaming journalism that they don't understand the medium that they are like reviewing. It's kind of disappointing, if I'm being honest.
Well, I think there's a few things to dig into there. I'm sure we've talked about this before, or at least I swear I brought this up on the show at some point before, but just this is a good reminder that like, you're not being more objective if you're just being more critical.
Right, exactly.
Right? You never want to follow anyone that is like purely everything sucks, everything's negative, everything is horrible, terrible, awful, bad, because that's not really looking at things in a like more objective way. It's just like being critical for the sake of being critical.
Like, it makes you less like a reliable source of like opinion and more cynical.
Yes.
You're not gonna like, obviously not every person is going to love every game out there. There are people that like look at some of like these 10 out of 10s that is like described by the masses, these are 10 out of 10 games, and they may not rate it as high. Maybe they think it's a 8, maybe they think it's a 6. Like, and there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with it, but their experience with it is going to be different than what your experience is going to be with it. Like, a lot of people, yes, will have the same experience, I think, once they kind of understand, like, here's what makes this game. But I'm sure there's also a problem of, like, when you don't necessarily have the same experiences, like, but why does your side of things here need to be said louder because you didn't like it as much? Like, and sometimes I also think that part of the problem is, like, some people don't get put on for the right reviews in those websites. And like, it's not just IGN, there's a few of them like across like all the gaming sites. Like, sometimes it's just the luck of the draw of what you get. Like, you're assigned to review this game and it's not your usual genres that you would go into. Like, if you are a person that prefers, like, say, cozy games, and they give you Mouse PI for Hire all of a sudden as your thing, like, you're not going to view it, I feel like, as favorably as you would, say, like, Stardew Valley 2 or something if that were to come out.
Well, it's in a similar way. I remember listening to some episodes of the CU podcast, which I know I've brought up on here before as well. And one of the things that one of the guys on that show does is he's like spearheaded these like review guidebooks for the NES, SNES, and N64 libraries. So like it's their entire book reviews, like entire books of reviews of like every game in those libraries. And it's not all just done by him. Like he shares like, okay, some people do these games, some people do these other games. So like, you know, there was a point where he was talking about the process of like doing these, and it's like, you know, on the Super Nintendo, there are a lot of games by this Japanese developer, Koei. You probably know them today. They work with Tecmo. They're Koei Tecmo, the folks that do the Dynasty Warriors stuff. But a lot of games that Koei would do on the Super Nintendo are like super extremely dry simulation games. Like, I kid you not, there is a simulation game on the Super Nintendo about the American Revolutionary War. You would not, like, anyone could review that, but like there's some people who really, really love strategy games and really like get the systems and understand how that works. That person is better equipped to review that game than somebody who likes, you know, high concept action games. Because on the one hand, you could argue that the person who really likes those strategy games, you could make the argument that maybe they're going to be a little bit more lenient on it because they like that genre. But the person who explicitly hates that genre, or like just doesn't like games that are slow and plotting like that, isn't going to get the game. So you're really not going to get a valuable review out of that, because if you're already going into it with this preconceived feeling of, I don't care for this kind of game, what value, like what are they going to give you to learn about it if you're somebody who's on the fence who might want to try it out? So yeah, it's a tough situation. All right. Should we get into our main topic today? We've kind of had our 20-minute ramble at the start of the episode.
I know,
like
I missed these.
Usually have.
No, because there has been a lot going on since our last episode. We had some news, I know, on the Stop Killing Games front, and then on top of it, the big news being a lot of stuff with Xbox lately, a lot of stuff with Sony in particular also. It is a lot, to say the least.
Yeah, it's been a busy time. So, I think the main thing we wanted to focus on today is related to Sony's latest goings on. There's something we talked about a little bit ago with Sony that's like they already were kind of leaning into this bad sort of thing about like you need to log on so many times to like make sure that you're like you can access your games. And that ended up in the end being a little bit more complicated in that it's like, well, after a certain point it basically is revealed that you're keeping the game. The newest thing that Sony is in the news for, I would say, is definitely more cut and dry. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the big thing that I've kind of noticed was a lot of we had really high highs going into this year, and then like something about the last like it feels like 2 weeks just suddenly so much was going on that like front where it was like I know recently Xbox announced layoffs. We got Sony announcing they're not going to be doing physical discs anymore. PS3 store and the Vita store I think are going to be coming down fairly soon.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a lot to take in.
We should also add to the reports suggest Project Helix, which is likely the next Xbox, will also be disc-free. So, yeah, PlayStation blog, July 1st. I have this pulled up here. From Sid Schumann. As consumer preferences in the broader entertainment industry continue to shift away from physical discs to digital, physical game disc production for all new games released on PlayStation consoles will be discontinued starting January 2028. Games will only be offered digitally on PlayStation in basically a year and a half.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen now was that there's going to probably be a spike in physical sales now, especially on Sony games. But I think what sucks is that it's like Sony's the first one to say it. Now I feel like it's also going to be a lot of people are going to be noticing this because there's already a lot of backlash on it online for sure. Because I've seen numerous videos on like TikTok, Instagram, all these other sites. YouTube has been blowing up with a lot of this whole thing with Sony. And I think the thing that I'm most like concerned about is it's like it feels like a step backwards because we've talked a little bit about how it really feels a lot of the time like these people who are in charge of these companies want us to believe we don't own the things that they make. And that is a thing that I can't stand by. Like, I understand if you're pissed about, like, people trying to resell stuff, but, like, at the same time, like, this could set an unrealistic precedent, too. Like, if you imagine this level of, like, ideas when it comes to this, and then apply it to something like cars. Like, if people suddenly were getting pissed off that cars were being resold, and they're like, oh, we're only going to do digital cars. I'm like, this sounds asinine in every sense of the word. And I think the other problem that I have with it, too, is, like, this is, like, right after they just announced that, like, 500 movies were removed off of PlayStation accounts because of a licensing deal. Like, this is not a good look for Sony in any way, shape, or form. And, like, from what I've heard, they have not posted anything in days since that announcement. Like, they know they fucked up. And they just are not willing to admit it.
Right. It's interesting looking at a lot of these things because, you know, it makes sense, right, that Sony would eventually lose the license to different movies to sell them. The question on that becomes, and I guess evidently this is just, there must be some way as to how this is written that the outcome with the movies, for example, is like, yeah, we just kind of have to, like, you know, take them away. But you don't see that happen in other mediums, right? Like, let's say, or even with games, right, on PlayStation. Okay, well, we can't sell this game on the PlayStation Store anymore. Have you ever heard, like, I honestly, aside from when we were covering Stop Killing Games with the crew, I cannot think of any other instances where it's been like, well, we can't sell this game anymore, and so we're also like going to just remove it from your system. It's just, it doesn't make sense that would just get poofed away into no longer existing. Because, to your point, the thought is, if you've made the transaction to give money for product, you therefore get to keep product, because it doesn't just poof away into the ether.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's really pissing me in particular, and I'm sure a lot of other people off, is that they seem to think that, like, a digital good is only as good as long as it is up on something. Like, this is the internet. It's out there somewhere. Like, and I'm not going to say, full disclosure, and this conversation loop does not promote piracy of any kind, but there are probably sites out there that have those movies out there. So, like, if a movie gets taken off a streaming service and it is not anywhere else, it's probably on one of those sites. All it takes is knowing somebody to know where to go look. Like, it's the same age.
There's a reason why people say if something's on the internet, it's there forever.
Yes. But they're trying to claim that it is not. That's what I think is the thing that's really annoying about this whole thing, is that it's like, they're just hoping we're stupid and just going to accept this. It's like, no, you made this product. This is a real thing. Like, best case scenarios is that we should have physical media, because there's certain games that, like, going back to the licensing thing, there are certain games that do not have, like, a long-term licensing deal, that it will be removed off of shelves, which is understandable. Steam had that recently, actually, sometime in the last, like, year or two. Spec Ops: The Line, one of the better, like, third-person shooters from, like, the 360 PS3 generation, was taken off of Steam because of a licensing deal, because of copywritten music in there. It's like, okay, understandable. Like, it's not going to say. But Steam also allows you to still have that even afterward. Like, I still have on Steam the original Poker Night at the Inventory, despite the fact that they re-released it, I think this year, actually. And I can still go and play that old one if I really want to. I can go buy the other one if I want, like, updated graphics and new stuff. I'm not sure. But it didn't lose the old one, per se. That's why Steam is, I think, in such a better spot knowing this. Yes, they are a digital storefront, but they are also not going to say, hey, you don't get to keep these permanently, because I can still play these also offline. Like, I don't need to be connected to the internet on playing, like, say, Mark of the Ninja, because I did that back in college when I first bought it on Steam. I played it offline because my laptop at home had no internet to connect to. So I had to find a way to play it, and they just let me play it without having to really have too much of an issue. So I'm like, okay, cool. That seems like a fair trade. Sony is kind of in this mentality of thinking that, like, oh, well, we can take these whenever you want. It's like, then why are you selling them? Like, there are a lot of people out there that don't have the same level of access to internet or subscription services and all that stuff. Like, I don't have PlayStation Play. I don't have Xbox Game Pass. I do have, like, the Switch one, but, like, we're not going to be able to afford $60 to $70 to $80 worth of subscriptions for multiple systems. Our time is already very limited. We have to kind of do it where we see fit and call it a day. Like, that's the best we're going to do.
Well, it's interesting that you say all that, because the thing that I couldn't get out of my mind toward the end of what you were talking about there is, like, until you, like, mentioned the subscription specifically, is like, the logic that you're leading toward here is probably what would make the most sense in long term, but also would be terrible in practice, most likely, is, well, if we don't get to own our stuff, we shouldn't have to buy individual games because they can't be taken away. That, I think, is sort of the major disconnect for people, because since time immemorial, okay, probably since realistically a modern form of capitalism immemorial, but also like we have to think about libraries in there too. Anyway, my point is the relationship between people and media has been, and I bring up libraries for this reason. You go to place and you have relationship with library that lets you check out books. You can even request books from places that are not your library. You can get it sent to your local library so you can have it for a set period of time. In the case of like actually purchasing something, like, for example, kind of related to that, let's say you liked a book so much that you actually wanted to own a copy of it. The relationship was book is printed out and sold to retailer for a price. Retailer sells it for a small markup where they make a small profit. If you see value in that, you buy it and it is yours to do with whatever you want. This is completely breaking that relationship.
Yeah, the entire capitalism, like, structure comes down to, like, we buy goods and services. There are places that, or, just even individual people, they sell them for a markup so they can make a profit, so they can either into, like, in the case of Barnes & Noble, they can buy more books for people to buy then later. Or if you were a solo, business owner, you need to do this to help grow, that kind of thing. Like, that is the whole structure as it is supposed to be. What they're trying to do is basically with these digital things, whether it's movies, whether it's games, they want us to say, okay, we'll let you play this until we won't let you play it anymore, and then we're just going to take it back. They're basically saying take backsies, and that is not something that we should be allowed to do. Like, if you make something, there should be a way to keep it, regardless of what, like, it might be. Even if it's a digital copy, like, there should not be a feasible way to, like, take something away from you if you've purchased it. Like, when the Wii shop, or not the Wii shop, when the Wii U shop and the 3DS eShops went down, I remember, like, the months before that, I was buying cards to go buy things on the virtual console just so I had them on my Wii U. And in the same way, I was also downloading stuff on my 3DS so I knew that I owned it, because, like, some of that stuff is digital only. Like, for example, the Fire Emblem Fates games for 3DS, there's 2 physical copies, but it only allows you to pay or play what side that you bought. If you want to play the digital one, or you want to play the other side, or the third path that they eventually added, you had to buy and download the DLC. Well, that's not necessarily the best thing for that either, because now
you straight up, if you were, let's say today you bought Fire Emblem Fates Birthright, right? If you want to play Conquest, now you got to go find a copy of Conquest.
And now if you want to play
Revelation, you're screwed.
At least until there is a point that Nintendo eventually can find a way to get 3DS emulation on the Switch 2, which may happen, it may not, I don't know. I don't know at the level of that and how that looks like. I hope that they can, because there's a lot of great games on the 3DS, and I am very mad that, like, they're only 3DS. Like, it's a problem with exclusivity in its own right, but that's a whole other conversation. Is like, they're all stuck on a system in some cases. Like, with the PlayStation 3 store coming down, there are already people who are saying, hey, you should go and download this before it goes away. Like, Persona 2, for example. Like, you could either buy a real copy of it, which, as much as I would love to own that, I'm not spending $150 on Persona 2, even if it is a good game. But I will spend $10 for it digitally if it means I can download it and play it on my PS3. And I will unhook it from the internet if you think you're going to take it from me. But, like, I'm just kind of flabbergasted by, like, these execs who are clearly not in touch with, like, the average consumer. They don't seem to understand that, like, physical media means more than just being able to say you own it. There's a feasible way to actually play the game without needing a subscription, without needing an internet connection. Like, I didn't have to download a GameCube game because it was all already on there. If anything, it has only taught me and shown me that the video game companies are just being lazier. Like, not necessarily the people who are making the games, but like the people who are putting these out to try to make a profit. It's like, I'm tired of these day one patches and DLC for stuff that should have been on the disc. It's like the whole debacle with like the Grand Theft Auto 6 stuff too. Like, we were probably going to get into that a little bit. Like, there's no reason that the $80 standard edition should exist with cut content, and then you're selling the other one for $100 that has the same content you put in. What the do you mean I need to pay an extra $20 for stuff that should have been in there day one?
So, I never know how to respond to some of these things, because I think these are all like really good beliefs and arguments from principle. And I think they're the correct perspective to take realistically in the long term. But some of these, in some of these cases, you have day one updates that are basically like enabling certain content, which some of that is because maybe it can't entirely fit on the disc. You remember with the second part of the Final Fantasy VII remake set, it was a huge deal. It's gonna be on 2 discs. Wow. Part of that is because, well, the game is so gigantic that it could not fit on a single Blu-ray. I mean, that used to be a thing with a lot of games with, funnily enough, the original PlayStation.
I still remember playing LA Noire on the 360, and that was 3 discs in one case. I still have that copy. Like, that was just common practice for a lot of it. Like, these games that would have to be on multiple discs, and like, they're making the argument of like, oh, well, this is just added stuff that we can just cut out the middleman. It's like, you're just cutting out physical media. Like, that's not a as cool thing as you think it is. Like, on the surface, it might seem good because it means less plastic for, you know, things to be used like that could be used for something else. Discs, not, you know, and even if, like, say, people throw away games, like certain games, yes, physically can, you know, get scratched and they can't be rebuffed to be playable again, and they have to go in the dumpster. In a way, it does help environmentally, yes, but at the same time, if you are going to use that to your advantage to just take it away from us because it's digital only, that doesn't make it any better, I feel like.
I mean, to your point, it is literally better for the environment, but the thing that I think we're missing here is, you know, there's kind of a question of priorities that's being asked of people. Because, you know, when we were thinking about talking about this the other day, what am I saying? Yesterday. You know, the way that I described this topic of PlayStation ending physical games, and, you know, reportedly Microsoft and Xbox too, is, you know, it's really a culmination of pretty much everything that we followed last year in stop killing games. Well, now it's a lot easier for games to be killed.
Yeah, which makes that whole movement even more important now.
It is a culmination of also driving up prices because, you know, I saw actually a perfect example of this earlier today where someone had a comparison. You have to spend $70 to get God of War Ragnarok on the PlayStation Store. You can easily find a physical copy of it for $30 out at retail. So now, obviously, like we talked about with game prices too, earlier this year and last year too, we can't pretend like sales don't happen and sales don't exist. They do happen. I mean, you literally brought up the Steam Summer Sale earlier in this recording here. And that happens on console too. That probably, I wouldn't say to the same extent, usually with the same types of value. But, you know, we can't lie and pretend like that's not a thing. But then you're limiting yourself to, well, I have to wait till a certain moment in time compared to, yeah, if you go to the store, a game that's I don't remember when God of War Ragnarok came out, but let's just say 4 to 5 years old, naturally no one's going to pay that same amount at retail anymore because it's an old game. Why is it still being sold for that much on the PlayStation Store? Well, because that's the retail value and that's what they want to sell it for. And then the last thing that it's culmination of is, it's like with the key cards. And this is where I finally circle back to where I mentioned the point of priorities. Because in that same series of keycard episodes, we talked about, like, well, there's a couple reasons why Final Fantasy VII Remake and now Rebirth, which is the second part that I referenced earlier, why they're on keycards on Switch 2. And why they need to be installed to your hard drive on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X if you buy the physical copies of those games. And it's because the developers are prioritizing, and also in the case of Sony for sure with the PS5 and Microsoft for sure with the Series X. I can't say for sure as much with Nintendo, but I mean, I would imagine this is something that they're thinking about too. There's only, like, they can't necessarily sell consoles anymore on, look at the amazing graphical jump, because I wouldn't necessarily say they've plateaued, but, like, I mean, it doesn't get, the jump between the PS3 and the PS4 already people were saying wasn't huge. I think you could very much argue the same thing with the PS4 to the PS5. So now we need to sell the system on something like, oh, it's got a solid state drive in it, which makes loading times basically non-existent. But the only way you can achieve that is by installing the game to the hard drive, because the alternative is using the load time of actually reading the game off the disc with the laser, which is never, ever, ever going to be as fast as reading it off of the solid-state drive. So if that's what the priority is going to be, and, let me be frank, really quick loading times is a great priority to have, because no one likes sitting there watching a loading screen when they could be playing. But that's a big trade-off if the alternative is, well, the game is on the media, and I can access it whenever I want. So we kind of have to figure out, as like a video gaming culture, what's the important priority? Is the important priority you have the media and can trade it to someone else, sell it, get it for cheaper? Or is the priority the ability to have superior graphics, faster loading times, and whatever? Because that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, it's like they're kind of floundering a little bit back and forth between what's the actual reason you're doing this. It kind of reminds me of there's a Russian Badger bit from like a long time ago where it was like, it fits very well with the topic at hand. Why is Black Ops 2 still $60 fucking dollars? Which, by the way, it is actually $40 right now on Steam with no sale price for context. But like at the time, it was still $60 on the Steam store, and it's just like, that game has been out since the 2010s. What are you talking about? Why am I paying $60 for that? Like, yeah, I wouldn't want to pay that either, if I'm being completely honest. Like, even like right now, I looked up like Black Ops just to kind of see like where it was actually at. They're only like 50% off. So they're still like $20 for games that don't really have the same level of like multiplayer they used to. Like, I don't know if I would necessarily call that a win in my book per se.
Now, just for comparison here, let me go to one of my favorite websites, which is of course pricecharting.com. So, do you want to do the original Black Ops?
Sure, let's do original Black Ops.
Do you want 360 or PS3?
Give me both, why not?
Okay, Call of Duty Black Ops on the PlayStation 3. I'll be generous, and we will go with a complete listing. So you get the game and the manual, if there even was a manual, and the box on PlayStation 3. $11.17. Xbox 360, same thing, $12.49.
Sounds about right. This is what I've seen it in like multiple stores, give or take.
Now, the alternative to your point is, do you want to pay that or do you want to pay full price? I'm going to look up, since I used the example, I'm going to look up God of War Ragnarok on here and see what it's going for on its own, complete. Complete, PS5, God of War Ragnarok, $25. Do you want to pay that or do you want to pay the retail price on digital? I know what I'd pick.
I know what I would pick. Like, I feel like the silence should tell you a lot.
Right. Now, the interesting thing here is the belief, part of the argument is, well, so many more people are downloading these anyway. And I've seen conflicting reports on that. I've seen some belief that, Sony's arguing, well, 80% of sales are done digitally, but I've also seen that the claim with that is that percentage is being made up of downloads of games that are available physically and digitally, and games that are only available digitally, which obviously greatly inflates the number of digital sales if you're also including, well, you can only download this game digitally, like some indie title. But on the other hand, you could also, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I could conceive of there being ways to inflate numbers the alternative way, to suggest that maybe physical sales are a little bit more. Like for a code in a box, if that's counted as digital only, but it's also physical, I don't know. But my point is, like, even then, the case, to your point, that this even should be a thing happening now, even if you want to argue that it's the future regardless, is kind of weak.
And I think the thing that I am kind of more upset by, and by the way, you brought up actually a good point where they were talking about how, like, the numbers are, saying that more people do digital. There's apparently some rumor floating around, which I have not found any way to confirm whether this is correct or not, but there has been rumors saying that Sony may have inflated the numbers, so to speak. I don't know how much of that is true, but it would look really bad if it was the case for Sony, because it's like you're basically using made-up statistics to give yourself justification. Like, I can think of a certain person who would do this, definitely not naming names, but they definitely are leading a certain country, but that's not the point. But like, if
making things up to say there's a better case, I mean, let's be serious, that really could be a lot of countries.
Yeah, you're right. But like, the point still being, though, is it's like we're at a position now where it's like they're trying to find a justification for what they're doing, and if they have to make it up to get to that, they probably wouldn't care if that was the case. Like, they just want their way to be right no matter what it is. Like, it's frustrating because it's like, I understand if you want to cut costs, sure, there's got to be somewhere around there. But I think if we're being legitimately honest, I can think of a few people who probably could help with the cutting cost part by taking a severe paycheck reduction. And I mean that as higher ups, because these people are paid way too much as it is as company heads to make dumbhead decisions. And I don't think that they should be making the money that they are. That money should be going more into the companies to help with development, with keeping the studios that they keep buying over and over. Which, speaking of, we should probably talk on those too with the Xbox layoffs, because we haven't gotten to talk too much on that.
I'll be honest, reading what I read today, in the grand scheme of things, could have been much worse.
Right. Honestly, it didn't sound good when I initially read it, but like the more I've kind of seen, I know Double Fine put out a statement recently. I forget, someone else also did that was previously bought by Microsoft, but they basically are saying like they are going to operate independently, which is good. I think it's fine that they're going to be independent studios, but it is hard to kind of, be optimistic when that giant Microsoft safety net of money is suddenly no longer underneath you. But I think that just goes to be able to say, hey, we should have more games, or more studios, excuse me, that should have some funding to be able to create what they can. Because I hate that we are in an age of, GoFundMes and Kickstarts. Not saying that, like, it's not necessary if you need a little extra revenue, but, like, it sucks to see, like, there are people who have to, like, resort to it to finish a project because they can't get the funding any other way. Like, that's the thing that sucks.
Right. But by all means, of course, the first thing that headlines with this and is important is 3,000 people are out of work right now, and that's bad.
Yeah, I think it said like 3,200 over the course of the next like 2 or 3 years, if I remember right.
1,600 let go today, another 1,600 within the next 12 months. So, like, bottom line, that sucks, right? Especially because, like, we're in a place where the global economy isn't very amazing. So it's sad to see people lose jobs. But when you also acknowledge, like it says here, Double Fine and Compulsion Games regain their independence and retain their IP. That's the same thing that happened with Toys for Bob. Now, granted, obviously they didn't have much IP, but they got their independence. Now they're making a new Spyro game.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, I'm stoked for that.
We could very well see, in the case of Double Fine, right? I'm not saying this necessarily will happen, but like they just did Psychonauts 2 in the last few years, it's going to be a lot easier for them to do a Psychonauts 3 because they're not necessarily reliant on, the
corporate overlords.
We need Microsoft to give us the blessing to do it. They can do it and look for funding to make that project happen.
As long as it doesn't end up like a Shenmue 3 kind of situation, but...
Right. Similarly, other ones here, Ninja Theory and Undead Labs are going to get new ownership with funding complete development on Senua and State of Decay 3. So they're not getting to like be on their own, but they're going to... The thought is they will continue just under some new ownership. And that could go either way, because they could end up basically in the same situation where it's like they get bought by some company that thinks they need to buy up another studio, and realistically they don't. But they could also end up under the umbrella of another company and then continue to thrive and keep making more really, really good games in the future. Really, the one that seems concerning here specifically is with Arcane, because I see that they're only entering talks to review potential strategic options, which I will say doesn't sound very...
It's not really a great phrase.
Right, that doesn't sound very optimistic. Who knows? It could be fine, but not exactly what I would call encouraging.
Yeah, I think Arcane is the one that I would be the most concerned about too, just because as someone who loves Dishonored, like that was the first game I played by Arcane. I hate to see how far they've fallen, because like Dishonored 1 was amazing, Dishonored 2 was amazing. I haven't gotten to play the Death of the Outsider one yet, but I've heard good things about that. Deathloop was kind of where things got in a weird spot, and then Redfall was Redfall. Well, let's be honest, that was a whole mess in its own right. That makes Back 4 Blood actually look like a better game by a long shot. Neither of those games were like amazing by any stretch, but like Back 4 Blood was at least playable. Like you could get through that game. Redfall you could not. Then Blade was supposed to kind of be that like jumpstart again, where it was basically them hoping to kind of catch that lightning in a bottle again that they had with Dishonored. But I really hope that game doesn't get canceled, because that would suck to see, because Blade deserves a game. Like after the success of like the Spider-Man games, the Batman Arkham games, I'm assuming Wolverine will absolutely flood money when that comes out. But Blade, I felt like, was something that was like is a lesser known hero by comparison to the rest of the ones I just listed. The Blade is like prime for a good action video game, and like still really hasn't. And like we've had like other games, yes, like, but there's just not to the same extent of like the grandeur of like the PS4 Spider-Man, or the Batman Arkham Asylum and Batman Arkham City games. Like those are some of the best superhero movie or not movies, but superhero games that like I think have ever come out of any studio. And this Blade one hopefully could also be in that pantheon, so to speak.
Yeah, but if it doesn't come out, there's no way to know.
Yeah, then I get a scale-bound situation. I'm still mad about that years later. That one still pisses me off. I don't know if you ever saw that game at all, Scalebound.
I remember because that was going to be like an RPG from Platinum, which seems a little like, I don't usually think of Platinum games and RPG in the same sentence, but
yeah, but it was
could be
so
interesting.
good. Like, just the trailer got me hyped when I first saw it with like the dude who's like riding the dragon, and he's got the arm like that's just like all covered in like scales and stuff. I'm like, this looks so cool. And then it got canceled. I threw a chair across the room when I heard. I wish I was kidding about that.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. I think it could have been an interesting game had it been able to come out.
I mean, there is a low chance that it could still, like, sometime down the road. I think it's one of those things where, like, it's more. I feel like it's one of their like Platinum games, like in case of emergency, break glass kind of things, because like they must have, at minimum, the concept somewhere. Like this can't just be something that they just threw everything away. Like they didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So, another thing that I think is worth touching on here with this whole, just the whole thing. Did you see the comment recently regarding Sony and selling hardware?
I don't know if I've seen this. I might have, but I'm not sure what we're referring to here.
Quote, "It is not realistic for us to absorb all component cost increases." Basically, we've been seeing in the last year plus that system prices are going up for PlayStation and Xbox, and there's still like a month to 2 months until Switch 2 goes up to $500. And it's because, in part, I guess I can't say for everyone, but for sure, obviously, with this comment from Sony, something like this. The model on consoles in the past pretty much worked like this. The hardware would be sold at a loss, right? So when people bought the original Nintendo in the 80s, it was being sold for less than the console was worth in terms of like, how much it cost to make and the labor and all that. Because the thought was games were so cheap to make that that's where all the profit is. We're not seeing that anymore, is the point with this.
Yeah, I think as long as this backlash against Sony in particular is in play, and it could very well die out between now and 2028 when they're supposedly saying that they're going to stop doing physical discs. I think this is going to show. I think the best way I've heard it described with the whole Xbox and Sony situations lately was it's a race to the bottom. And it's so sad because it's like we're coming off of like a generation that is like arguably one of the better ones in the last 40 years, and we are essentially going to watch greed sink an entire industry. I think I will make the argument, and I'm only saying this as my opinion. I don't know for sure this is going to happen, but by the time that we get to PS6, at some point along the line in that era, we're going to see a gaming crash the likes of the ET Atari fiasco. I don't know in terms of what, but something's going to happen that will make this industry in a much more concerning sense Because I have seen plenty of people and them talking about, hey, we hate this Sony decision. Some people are going as far as saying, like, I'm going to be done with gaming as soon as the PS6 is announced. Like, that is a very strong statement for some people. Like, I understand the anger. Like, I am going to still play stuff on Steam for sure. I will not be buying a PS6 unless by some act of God they decide that they go back on it and say, we're going to make physical discs still. And even like then, it's like, I'm still kind of in that same vein of like, I don't know if I want to Switch 2 yet because of the fact that I want physical cartridges, not just game keys. Like, it sucks that we're in a position like that.
To your point, I think the question starts to become, well, what's the selling point? What's the differentiation between this and just playing on my computer that has been for the last 15 to 20 years basically digital only anyway, right? I remember similarly seeing in comments, obviously I just talked about the comment from, this is from Sony Interactive Entertainment President and CEO Hideaki Nishino talking about how it's not realistic for us to absorb all component cost increases. Another comment that was talked that I don't remember if it was him or someone else that he made recently at, likely his, consumer quarterly Q&A that he has to do. The talk was like, well, the thought isn't that they don't want the next hardware to be just the same sort of, like, normal box. They need to find, like, some sort of new hook, which is fine. And, to their credit, I think, Sony has done some interesting things with stuff like the haptic triggers and being the only console with VR, but, it's coming at the cost of, other than that, it's pretty much a standard box. So if you're taking away the only other, like, big differentiator with a console versus PC, which is the actually having physical games, I think the question becomes, well, what are you selling me on here? And obviously your point is also taken, too, in the case of the Switch 2 with third-party games. If most of them are going to be key cards anyway, I know we talked about this last year. This is pretty much where I've landed on, is like, okay, if a game is on a cartridge, that's what I'm going to buy. I'm looking over at my library right now. I have 6 games. I only have one third-party game on the Switch 2 right now, and it's Fantasy Life I, because it's a Switch 2 edition, which means it's on the cartridge. If you compare that to my, 1, 2, 3, 4 full shelves of original Switch games, because I am ridiculous, it's pretty widely varied between first-party games and third-party games, because they're all on the media. But, and I paid, I'm sure a lot of these I got on sale, but there definitely are some that I paid full price for, and there are ones here that, I probably didn't get like a huge sale price on it, but, in a similar way, gosh golly, I would love to own the Switch 2 version of Pac-Man World 2 Repack. Man, I really wish I could own Dragon Quest VII Reimagined on the Switch 2, but I'm just not gonna pay $60 to have to download the game anyway. In the case of Pac-Man World 2, it's $30.
And you're gonna basically you could do that from the eShop, realistically.
Yes, and both of those games are on sale right now. At the time of recording, actually. I think the sale should also be just wrapping up. It's a similar summer-type sale. And, Pac-Man World 2 is like $21. I don't feel good about putting a lot of money behind something like that even, because I think it's encouraging the problem, right? I could pay $60 right now and own Dragon Quest VII's reimagined, but I would rather do that and have it be on the media. I could pay, right now it's like $42 on there for that game. Okay, well, here's the problem with that. I know that if I hold out, if I wait for a while, it'll be even cheaper. Because in that same sale, there's also other games that are on sale. So let me just take a look at the shop right now. And let's just compare with, say, Dragon Quest XI's. That is currently going for $20 right now. Now, that game came out in 2019. Let's take a look at the original Pac-Man World Repack. Oh, that isn't on sale at the moment. But I have seen in recent sales that it's been like $8. So, if I don't want to encourage the problem, and it's a race to the bottom anyway, that's what it's encouraging for consumers too. If game makers and hardware makers are racing to the bottom in terms of how things are being produced, all right, you want to make this for the absolute cheapest that it can be? That incentivizes the same thing for consumers. I will pay as little as I humanly possibly can for this because that's what was put into the game. And that isn't degrading the developers of those games. I don't want to, come across that way. I'm sure everybody did a great job in doing what they had to do for that game. This is purely on the studios because while there are cases where they're just eventually, like you come upon hitting upon the wall of technology, like we talked about with the key cards, and like we discussed earlier with the disk drive versus the SSD in systems. I prioritize being able to own the game. So since that's my priority, I'd rather deal with a slightly longer load time and have the game and pay $30 for it than, okay, I'm going to wait till it's $5 and it'll load a little bit faster and I had to download it. That's the bottom line for me.
No, I think that's a fair argument too. Like, I guess the thing that I have the biggest problem with, I have seen recently actually some statements from GOG, if you're familiar with them.
Mm-hmm. Good old games.
Yep. And they have been very vocal about it. They have made it a point to tell people, like, you own the games you buy through us. So it's like, okay, there are a lot of places like that are starting to really be vocal. And even if they're not being vocal, biggest one that I saw was Naughty Dog. Because they, on their socials, I think it was on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. But if you look at their cover photo for like the banner, it's a bunch of discs. So they are even, maybe they're not saying that part out loud, but they are showing support for what they're doing. Like they want to show.
Do we know when that photo changed to that?
Offhand, no. I would assume it had to be fairly recent though, because apparently that was not the case though. Because I think it was
because that could change it if it's been that way for a little bit now. But obviously, to your point, if it's recent, like within the last handful of days.
But like studios are starting to speak up about it. There are literally other brands are clowning on Sony, which I still think is hilarious. Like the Domino's UK account saying that they were going to switch to digital pizzas after the new Sony announcement. And I'm like, holy crap, guys.
Well, because it's showing how absurd it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that, like, this is something that I feel like people in tech specifically don't get. Like, how absurd their ideas are. Because they think, oh, this is technology. We can do just about anything. You sound psycho in some cases. It's like, I don't think you fully get a good grasp of exactly what it is you're talking about. But You want to sit there and tell me otherwise? By all means, go for it. But you guys are not going to get the masses, I feel like.
The thought is, since, they're since they're the people making it, that obviously they're the ones who know best. And that's not necessarily the case, because the fact of the matter is they're making these things for consumers. At the end of the day, kind of circling back to where we were like 40 minutes ago, this is, completely breaking the dynamic of what one expects in capitalism. One expects, I give you money, I get this thing for it. And because there's no trust that people will get to keep these, and there's no trust that the products are necessarily going to be like, well, yeah, let's say like even if you preload something and it still has a day one update, right? People have very good reason to be skeptical of this. I remember seeing recently a video on this subject of someone talk about, like, people in the PC world going like, well, I don't get why people are all upset at Sony ditching digital games. It's been like this for us forever, and you don't see us being all upset.
You mean ditching physical.
Right, and because PC's been all digital for a long time. And Steam's obviously been dominant on that front. And, what the guy explained in the video was like, well, historically then, you don't get it. Because this is literally the same dynamic, just 20-some years in the future, right? Because how did you have to get PC games before Steam?
You used to have to actually buy the physical game and then
Right.
download it to the computer.
Right.
Like,
you
to
had
give you context at how old this practice has been is, like, I still remember like an old school like Apple computer that we used to run OG Oregon Trail on, and then even now there was a physical edition of League of Legends, if you can believe that. You had to download that from a physical copy of the game. And I think at the time, if I remember right, it had like specific things that were only on that physical copy. And that game has since become, free to play and is downloadable basically on any computer that can operate it. But like, it's so weird knowing that like we're at a position now where I don't think that some adults, I would say maybe the ones who are in their like early to mid 20s, certain people exceptions, like, because you're not that much farther along. That's like your age range here.
I will be 26 years old in like a little over a month.
Right. So, but what I'm getting at is like there's a lot of adults now that don't know what it's like to have physical games at all. And I think that's the type of people that are making this argument of like, I don't see what the big deal is of getting rid of physical games. It's like, it's because you didn't grow up with them. Like, and you don't understand the importance of them. You've only ever known digital because that is what companies are expecting all consumers to be now.
Well,
to
be. The point I want to make here is this isn't just a nostalgia thing. Like, I like buying physical games only because it's like that's how it's always been done, and it's like there's something that feels nice about, like, I can look at the box and see the pretty artwork on it. Like, that gives me the warm fuzzies. But there, obviously, we've also gone to this entire episode talking about like a lot of the practical stuff with it too. The real point I was trying to make there with the Steam thing is the arguments and debates that are being had right now, because physical production is set to end for PlayStation and likely Xbox. Those are the same arguments that were being had 20 years ago when Steam came on the scene. Okay? you think about it now, and people they know Valve, they know them. Oh, Valve, I love them. TF2, Portal, Portal 2, Half-Life. Now, you think back, obviously some of those games didn't exist, but then let's say you're back when Steam was first coming around, and you're like, the Half-Life guys are starting a thing to sell games, but it's only digitally? I don't know about that. They had to build the image Valve has today, where people look at Saint Gaben and all that stuff, had to be built over time. I don't think, as much as there are people that really like PlayStation and people who really like Nintendo and people who really like Xbox, there are definitely as many, if not more people, potentially, who don't trust one of them or don't trust all of them, and as such, the sell on you're going to have to download all your games is not as easy.
Yeah, there's just a lot to this entire debacle. We've talked a lot about this. I think, like you said, the last year. I think it's kind of clear for people who listen to us where we stand. We are very big physical media people, just in general. So I don't really see this as a thing that's going to change anytime soon for either of us. If you're going to make physical media, we're going to buy it from you. We will support it. If you're going to go to digital only, you can just screw off, and I'm not going to even bother with it. I'm not going to get a PS6. I am in the very slim minority of people who just don't care about Grand Theft Auto 6 personally. I never played the game, so it's not really anything I have to go out of my way to play. I get it's a big deal. Do not get me wrong. But I don't see the point in supporting it if this is how they're also going to be doing it with them. Just saying, hey, we're going to have no physical disc. It's just going to be a digital download code in a case. That is not something I'm going to support.
I made this comment in one of our keycard episodes. I can't remember if it was the first one or the third one, but I distinctly remember having this thought for sure and saying it on microphone. While I understand there, for some games, will be limitations that pretty much force you into needing to make them digital. And I suspect something like that could, or pretty much is, the case with GTA 6. Grand Theft Auto 6 is a big deal. It's obviously, it's not something I care about. It doesn't sound like it's something that you're interested in playing, but it's a cultural icon. And
oh yeah,
as such,
I was going to say, I am not going to take away from the cultural significance that is Grand Theft Auto. We have seen how big Grand Theft Auto 5 has been. Mm-hmm. Grand Theft Auto 4 was making splashes when that was back in its heyday.
Even GTA 3 and Vice City on the PS2, San Andreas.
Yep, they have all been insanely influential, I think, games. I will not take that from them. They're just games that I have never played. But to continue your point.
Yes, so I firmly believe, based on what I learned when doing all the keycard episode research with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I believe that there are probably limitations that Rockstar is being put up against, where technologically, to accomplish what they want to accomplish, they can't do it on a disc. That probably is in fact the case. But having the game only be a digital download, I think cheapens the game. It just does. I think it feels like, as a consumer, they don't care because they don't want to do these things. When the reality is they probably just can't do it. And then going back to our point on priorities, well, all right. if they can't do it, what do you want to sacrifice to make it so a version of the game could be published to the disc? You know, let's say the city for this GTA is going to be like the size of a gigantic metropolitan city, like a New York City level map. Okay, well, we can only do that if the game is download only, but if you want it on a disc, we have to make it like the size of a smaller city, like a, just to tie it more locally, it's going to be more of a Milwaukee than a New York. Is that a trade-off people are willing to make?
Yeah, it's a very loaded question, honestly.
Well, and that's why I'm asking it, because, like, you know, what I don't want to do is I don't want to run cover for these things, because as I think it's pretty clear, we're not in favor of ending the practice of physical media, but, you know, we also need to acknowledge where some of the limitations are. And if the choice is between having the game on disc and it feels like this is a real game, this is an important game, this is a game people are going to care about, or, well, we can't have any of that, but it can be gigantic and it can have like all this music and all these amazing visuals and it can load like practically instantaneously, but you have to download it. Something's got to give. You have to pick one or the other. And, you know, I don't love gigantic, ridiculous, hugely open world games anyway. So that certainly helps me land on wanting to continue the tradition of having a game on the media. But it is perfectly legitimate for somebody to say, yes, I want this absolutely gargantuan game with all these capabilities and all this amazing stuff that I can have out of it. And if the trade-off is I have to download it, I have to download it. It just is what it is. So, yeah, gaming kind of sucks today.
Unfortunately, that's what I think is the worst part of that whole thing. It's like, yeah.
We had to really boil it down to anything here. That's pretty much where it ends up is it's not a good time to be into video games.
No.
If at least one of these major issues weren't happening, like if games are like as cheap as ever, I feel like people would feel very differently about some of this stuff. But that's not the world we live in.
No. All right. I think on that note, it's probably the best place we're going to stop here for the
Yes, I do think so. Everyone listening here, if you enjoyed this episode number 56, please let us know. You've got a few ways you can do that. I got on here. I checked the voicemail inbox. I won't even go over that because we already know where that's going.
It's so full.
Yep, very full. We could have just done a Q&A episode coming back, obviously. No, it's empty. But if you want to send us a message and be the first one on our show, you can do so by sending a message to speakpipe.com/endlessconversationloop. You can also write a written comment. You can like the episode, whether you are on the YouTubes or on whatever audio platform of choice that you're using here. We would love to hear from you. Might even read out a comment if it's a good one, or obviously play it if it's audio and it's interesting. Yeah, that's all we have today. I think it's a worthwhile reason to come back, even if like it seems like every episode we do nowadays is like everything's depressing and it sucks, because that's kind of how gaming is right now.
Yeah, with how long it's going right now, with how that's all been, sometimes we may need the break now.
Yeah, next time we come back, we need to do a happy episode. We kind of had a happy-ish episode last time, but we need like a real, legit happy episode. Something we want to talk about. All right. But with that, I am Brandon.
And And I am Boom.
And we will talk to you the next time that we get together to record again, and maybe, hopefully, it won't be almost 2 months. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. I'll see you eventually.